Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted his rifle scope. The Afghan sun blazed overhead, turning the rocky terrain into a furnace. He had been stationed at Forward Operating Base Chapman for 8 months now, and the harsh landscape still took his breath away. The mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, their jagged peaks cutting against the cloudless sky like broken glass. Marcus was leading a routine patrol through the coast province when something caught his eye. About 200 meters ahead, a lone figure moved across the dusty path. At first glance, it looked like a local villager, but something seemed off. The figure moved with purpose, but there was no village in that direction for miles. Through his binoculars, Marcus studied the movement more carefully. His heart skipped a beat when he realized what he was looking at. It wasn't a person at all. It was a dog, and not just any dog. The animal appeared to be a German shepherd, but it was massive even for that breed. The dog's coat was a mix of tan and black, matted with dust and dirt from the harsh terrain. What made Marcus pause was the fact that the dog was carrying something on its back. The patrol consisted of 5 Marines, all experienced soldiers who had seen their share of unusual situations. Corporal Johnson, the youngest member of the team, squinted through his own binoculars. "Sergeant, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Marcus nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off the animal. The dog was definitely carrying a backpack, a military-style pack that looked heavy and well-secured. The straps were professionally fitted around the animal's chest and back, suggesting this wasn't some random occurrence. Someone had deliberately equipped this dog for a mission. The German shepherd moved with military precision, following what appeared to be a predetermined route. Its ears were alert, constantly scanning for sounds, and its posture suggested extensive training. This wasn't a stray dog wandering aimlessly through the desert. This was a working animal with a job to do. Private Martinez, the team's communications specialist, raised his hand to signal the others. "Should we approach, Sergeant?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air as Marcus weighed their options. In this part of Afghanistan, anything unusual could be dangerous. Improvised explosive devices were common, and insurgents often used creative methods to transport weapons and supplies. But something about the dog's behavior suggested otherwise. The animal showed no signs of aggression or fear. It moved with confidence as if it knew exactly where it was going and what it was supposed to do. Marcus had worked with military dogs before, and this animal's demeanor reminded him of the highly trained K-9 units back at base. The patrol maintained their distance, following the dog from several hundred meters away. The animal seemed aware of their presence but showed no concern. It continued along its path, occasionally stopping to sniff the air or check its surroundings before moving on. The backpack never shifted or appeared to cause the dog any discomfort, indicating it was properly fitted and balanced. As they followed the mysterious animal, Marcus radioed back to base. "Chapman Control, this is Bravo Squad. We have an unusual situation out here. We're following what appears to be a trained German shepherd carrying military equipment. Requesting guidance on how to proceed." The radio crackled with static before the response came through. "Bravo Squad, maintain safe distance and continue observation. Command wants more information before we make any decisions. Keep us updated on the animal's movements and destination." The patrol continued their careful pursuit for another hour. The dog's endurance was impressive. It maintained a steady pace across the rough terrain, never showing signs of fatigue despite the heavy load it carried. The animal navigated rocky outcroppings and steep inclines with ease, its powerful legs carrying it forward with determination. Corporal Williams, the team's medic, observed the dog's gait through his binoculars. "That animal is in excellent physical condition," he reported to Marcus. "Whatever training it's received, it's been thorough and professional. The way it moves, the way it carries that pack, everything suggests military or law enforcement background." The landscape began to change as they moved deeper into the valley. The barren rocks gave way to patches of scrubby vegetation, and signs of human habitation became more apparent. Old stone walls marked property boundaries, and terraced fields showed evidence of recent farming activity. The dog seemed to know this area well, taking shortcuts that only a local guide would know. Marcus felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with concern. Whatever this dog was carrying, wherever it was going, they were about to find out. The animal's behavior suggested it was nearing its destination. Its pace had quickened slightly, and it frequently looked ahead as if recognizing familiar landmarks. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky when the dog finally stopped. It had reached a small cluster of buildings that appeared to be abandoned. The structures were typical Afghan rural construction, flat-roofed buildings made of mud brick and stone. From their vantage point on a nearby ridge, the patrol could see the entire compound clearly. The German Shepherd sat down in front of the largest building and began to bark. It wasn't an aggressive bark, but rather a series of deliberate rhythmic sounds that seemed almost like a signal. The dog repeated this pattern 3 times, then sat quietly, waiting. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Someone or something inside that building was expecting this dog. The animal's behavior was too specific, too purposeful to be random. Someone had trained this German Shepherd to deliver whatever was in that backpack, to this exact location. Minutes passed in tense silence. The patrol remained hidden, watching for any sign of activity in the compound. The dog continued to wait patiently, occasionally adjusting its position but never moving away from the building's entrance. Then they saw movement. A figure appeared in the doorway of the main building, carefully scanning the surrounding area before stepping outside. Even from a distance, Marcus could see it was an elderly man, dressed in traditional Afghan clothing. The man approached the dog without fear, speaking to it in a gentle voice that carried across the quiet valley. Marcus realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just a random encounter between a man and a stray dog. This was a planned meeting, a carefully orchestrated rendezvous that had been arranged by someone who understood both the capabilities of highly trained animals and the needs of people living in one of the world's most remote and dangerous regions. The elderly man knelt beside the German Shepherd and began carefully unfastening the straps of the backpack. His movements were gentle but practiced, suggesting he had done this many times before. The dog remained perfectly still, allowing the man to work without resistance. Marcus watched through his binoculars, fascinated by the obvious bond between the animal and its human contact. As the backpack came free, Marcus could see it was indeed heavy. The old man struggled slightly with its weight, requiring both hands to lift it properly. Whatever was inside that pack was substantial and important enough to justify training a dog to transport it across miles of dangerous terrain. The man opened the backpack and began removing items one by one. From the patrol's position on the ridge, it was difficult to see exactly what was being unpacked, but the items appeared to be carefully wrapped and organized. The man examined each item thoroughly before setting it aside, his weathered face showing obvious relief and gratitude. Corporal Johnson adjusted his binoculars for a better view. "Sergeant, I think those might be medical supplies," he whispered. "The way he's handling them, the careful unwrapping, it looks like medicine or medical equipment." Marcus nodded, beginning to piece together what they might be witnessing. In remote areas of Afghanistan, access to medical care was extremely limited. Many villages were cut off from modern healthcare facilities by dangerous roads, hostile territory, or simply impossible distances. If someone had organized a system to deliver medical supplies using trained dogs, it would be both ingenious and desperately needed. The German Shepherd remained at the old man's side throughout the unpacking process. Occasionally, the man would pause to stroke the animal's head or speak to it in the local language. The dog's tail wagged slightly at these moments of affection, but it maintained its professional demeanor, alert and ready for whatever came next. After removing everything from the backpack, the old man disappeared into the building for several minutes. When he returned, he was carrying what appeared to be a different pack, similar in size but clearly containing different items. He began the process of fitting this new pack onto the dog's back, adjusting the straps with the same care and precision that had been used in the original fitting. Private Martinez whispered into his radio microphone, "Command, the subject has exchanged packages with a local civilian. The dog is now being fitted with different cargo. Still no signs of hostile activity, but this appears to be part of an organized operation." The radio response came quickly. "Bravo Squad, continue observation. Intelligence wants to know the final destination of this operation. Do not intervene unless you identify a direct threat." As the old man finished securing the new backpack, another figure emerged from one of the smaller buildings. This was a younger man, perhaps in his 30s, who approached the dog and the elder with obvious familiarity. He carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth, which he handed to the older man. The two men spoke quietly in their local dialect, while the German Shepherd sat patiently between them. Their conversation appeared serious but not distressed. They were discussing something important, but their body language suggested cooperation rather than conflict. Marcus watched as the younger man knelt down and examined the dog carefully. He checked the animal's paws, looked at its eyes, and ran his hands along its sides as if conducting a health inspection. The dog accepted this examination willingly, further evidence of its extensive training and socialization. The inspection complete, the younger man unwrapped his small bundle to reveal what appeared to be food and water. He offered both to the German Shepherd, who accepted the refreshment gratefully. As the dog ate and drank, the two men continued their quiet conversation, occasionally gesturing toward different directions as if discussing routes or destinations. Corporal Williams, observing through his medical training, noted the care being taken of the animal. "They're treating that dog like a valuable asset," he reported to Marcus. "The health check, the feeding, the careful handling of the equipment. This is a professional operation with people who understand the importance of maintaining their resources." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley as the resupply operation concluded. The older man gathered the items he had removed from the original backpack and carried them into the main building. The younger man made a final check of the new pack's straps and fittings, ensuring everything was secure for the next leg of the journey. The German Shepherd stood up and shook itself, ready to continue its mission. The animal showed no signs of fatigue despite having already traveled many miles that day. Its conditioning and training were clearly exceptional, allowing it to maintain peak performance under challenging conditions. What happened next surprised the watching Marines. Instead of immediately departing, the dog lay down in the shade of the building and closed its eyes. The younger man sat beside it, gently stroking its head while speaking in soothing tones. This wasn't just a working relationship. There was genuine affection between the human handlers and their four-legged courier. Marcus realized they were witnessing a rest period, a planned stop that allowed the dog to recover before continuing its mission. This level of planning and care suggested an operation that had been running for some time, long enough to develop efficient procedures and genuine relationships between all participants. The two men eventually retreated into the buildings, leaving the German Shepherd to rest in the shade. The dog remained alert even while resting, its ears constantly moving to track sounds from different directions. Every few minutes it would lift its head to scan the horizon before settling back down. As the patrol maintained their observation, Marcus found himself impressed by what he was seeing. In a region torn by conflict and hardship, someone had developed a system that leveraged the intelligence and loyalty of a highly trained animal to serve what appeared to be humanitarian purposes. The operation showed creativity, dedication, and a deep understanding of both human needs and animal capabilities. The shadows grew longer as evening approached. The German Shepherd eventually stood up and walked to the younger man, who had remained nearby. The man checked the dog's pack one final time, offered it another drink of water, and then pointed toward a path leading out of the compound in a different direction from which the animal had arrived. The dog's departure was as purposeful as its arrival had been. It trotted confidently along the designated path, its new cargo secure and its mission continuing. The two men stood watching until the animal disappeared behind a rocky outcropping, then returned to their buildings. Marcus made the decision to follow the German Shepherd rather than investigate the compound further. Whatever was happening here, the dog was clearly the key to understanding the full scope of the operation. As his patrol prepared to move out, he radioed their intentions to base command. The German Shepherd's second journey took it along a different route entirely. Instead of the open valley paths it had used earlier, the dog now followed a series of narrow trails that wound through rocky canyons and hidden passages. Marcus and his team had to work harder to maintain visual contact while staying concealed, requiring all their training in fieldcraft and navigation. The new terrain was more challenging for the Marines than it appeared to be for the dog. The animal moved with the sure-footed confidence of a creature that had traveled these paths many times before. It navigated loose scree slopes and narrow ledges without hesitation, the heavy pack on its back perfectly balanced to avoid shifting its center of gravity. Private Martinez, who had grown up hiking in the mountains of Colorado, was particularly impressed by the dog's route selection. "Sergeant, this animal is choosing paths that would challenge experienced mountaineers," he reported. It's taking the most direct routes while avoiding areas where it might be easily spotted from a distance. That's advanced tactical thinking. As they followed the German Shepherd deeper into the canyon system, Marcus began to understand why dogs might be ideal for this type of operation. A human courier traveling these same routes would be visible from much greater distances, would leave more obvious tracks, and would require regular rest stops. The dog moved silently, left minimal traces of its passage, and maintained a pace that would exhaust most humans. The canyon walls rose higher around them as they progressed, creating a natural corridor that provided excellent concealment from aerial observation. The dog seemed to understand this advantage, maintaining a steady pace without the cautious scanning behavior it had displayed in more open terrain. After 2 hours of difficult travel, the German Shepherd emerged from the canyon system into another valley, this one smaller and more isolated than the first. The landscape here showed clear signs of habitation, but of a different character than the previous stop. Instead of traditional Afghan buildings, Marcus could see what appeared to be a more temporary settlement, with tents and portable structures arranged in a semicircular pattern. Through his binoculars, Marcus counted approximately 15 people in the settlement, a mix of adults and children. Their clothing and appearance suggested they were local civilians, possibly nomadic herders or refugees displaced by the ongoing conflict in the region. The presence of children particularly caught his attention, as it indicated this was a family group rather than any kind of military operation. The German Shepherd approached the settlement with the same confidence it had shown at the previous stop. Several people came out to greet the animal, their faces showing obvious pleasure and relief at its arrival. A middle-aged woman was the first to reach the dog, kneeling down to embrace it while speaking softly in what Marcus recognized as Pashto. The woman's interaction with the dog revealed the same professional competence the Marines had observed at the first stop. She quickly began unfastening the backpack while others gathered around, their faces filled with anticipation. As the pack came free, Marcus could see the woman's hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from what appeared to be overwhelming gratitude. The contents of this backpack were different from what they had observed earlier. Instead of the carefully wrapped packages from the first stop, this pack contained what were clearly medical supplies arranged for immediate use. Marcus could identify bandages, bottles of medicine, and what appeared to be basic surgical instruments. Corporal Williams, watching through his own binoculars, provided medical context for what they were seeing. "Those supplies are arranged for emergency treatment," he whispered. "The way everything is organized? Someone with medical training prepared that pack for specific procedures or treatments." The woman who had greeted the dog began distributing the medical supplies to others in the group. Each item was handed over with careful instructions, and Marcus could see that several recipients appeared to be patients in need of treatment. One elderly man sat nearby with what appeared to be an infected wound on his leg, while a young child showed signs of illness that had concerned the adults around her. The arrival of the German Shepherd had transformed the mood of the entire settlement. People who had appeared worried and anxious now moved with purpose and hope. The dog had delivered more than medical supplies. It had brought the possibility of healing to people who had been cut off from professional medical care. As the distribution of supplies continued, Marcus noticed something that made him reconsider everything he thought he understood about this operation. The woman coordinating the medical supplies was clearly educated and experienced in healthcare. Her examination of patients and allocation of treatments showed professional competence that suggested formal medical training. A young man approached the German Shepherd with a different backpack, and Marcus realized they were about to witness another exchange. But this time, instead of loading the dog with a new delivery, the man was collecting items from the settlement. People brought small packages, letters, and what appeared to be samples or specimens that were carefully placed in the new pack. The significance of this reverse cargo became clear as Marcus watched the careful handling of each item. The dog wasn't just delivering supplies to isolated communities. It was also collecting information and materials that needed to be transported back to whoever was coordinating this operation. This was a two-way communication and supply system that connected remote settlements with resources and expertise they couldn't otherwise access. The German Shepherd accepted its new cargo with the same professional calm it had shown throughout the day. The pack was fitted carefully with multiple people checking the straps and balance to ensure the dog's comfort and the security of the contents. Once again, the animal was treated with the respect and care reserved for a valuable and trusted team member. Before the dog departed, the woman who appeared to be the medical coordinator knelt beside it and spoke quietly while stroking its head. Her words were clearly expressions of gratitude, but also what sounded like instructions or requests for future deliveries. The dog listened attentively, its intelligent eyes focused on her face as if understanding every word. The departure from this settlement was more emotional than the previous stop had been. Multiple people gathered to send the German Shepherd on its way, with children waving and adults calling out what were obviously words of blessing and appreciation. The dog responded to this attention with dignity, allowing itself to be petted and praised before refocusing on its mission. As the animal trotted away from the settlement, Marcus found himself thinking about the implications of what he had witnessed. This wasn't just an innovative delivery system, it was a lifeline for people who had been isolated by geography and conflict from essential services. Someone had recognized a desperate need and developed a solution that leveraged the unique capabilities of a highly trained dog to serve humanitarian purposes. The German Shepherd's third departure took it along yet another route, this one leading toward higher elevations where the terrain became even more challenging. Marcus realized that following the dog much further would require his patrol to venture into areas where their presence might be more easily detected by hostile forces. As they prepared to continue their pursuit, Marcus made a decision that would prove crucial to understanding the full scope of what they were witnessing. Instead of simply following the dog to its next destination, he decided to split his patrol, leaving 2 Marines to maintain observation of the settlement they had just left, while he and the others continued tracking the German Shepherd. The German Shepherd's journey into the higher elevations tested both its endurance and that of the Marines following it. The air grew thinner as they climbed, and the rocky terrain became increasingly treacherous. Marcus found himself constantly amazed by the dog's ability to navigate paths that seemed impossible for any animal carrying such a heavy load. The route led through a series of switchbacks, carved into the mountainside, ancient paths that had probably been used by travelers for centuries. The dog knew exactly where to place each step, never hesitating at difficult crossings or steep ascents. Its breathing remained steady and controlled, showing the kind of conditioning that could only result from months or years of regular training in this terrain. As they climbed higher, Marcus began to understand why this particular animal had been chosen for such demanding work. German Shepherds were known for their intelligence and loyalty, but this individual displayed an exceptional combination of physical capability and mental focus that set it apart even from others of its breed. Every aspect of its behavior spoke of careful selection and extensive preparation. The patrol had been climbing for nearly 3 hours when the German Shepherd finally reached what appeared to be its destination. The location was unlike the previous stops in several important ways. Instead of a valley settlement or temporary camp, the dog approached a single building constructed into the mountainside itself, partially carved from the living rock and camouflaged so effectively that Marcus might have missed it entirely without the dog as a guide. This was clearly a permanent installation, built with considerable skill and designed for concealment. The entrance was narrow and positioned to be invisible from aerial observation, while the building's profile blended seamlessly with the natural rock formations around it. Someone had invested significant time and resources in creating this hidden facility. The German Shepherd approached the concealed entrance and repeated the same signaling behavior they had observed at the first stop. 3 deliberate barks, a pause, then patient waiting. The response came quickly, but not in the form of an elderly villager or displaced civilian. The person who emerged from the hidden building was a woman in her 40s, wearing clean Western-style clothing and moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. Marcus studied the woman through his binoculars, noting details that painted a picture quite different from the rural Afghan settlements they had observed earlier. Her hair was uncovered and neatly arranged. Her clothes were practical but well-maintained, and her interaction with the dog showed both familiarity and professional competence. This was clearly someone with education and resources operating at a much higher level than the previous contacts. The woman greeted the German Shepherd warmly, but efficiently, immediately beginning the now familiar process of removing its backpack. However, her handling of the contents was markedly different from what they had observed before. Instead of distributing supplies to waiting recipients, she examined each item carefully before carrying everything inside the hidden building. Corporal Johnson, watching the proceedings with growing curiosity, whispered to Marcus, "Sergeant, this looks more like an intelligence operation than humanitarian aid. The way she's handling those materials, the security of the location, everything suggests this is some kind of command or coordination center." Marcus nodded, beginning to suspect they had discovered something far more significant than a simple supply delivery system. The hidden facility, the professional behavior of the contact, and the careful handling of materials all suggested this was the nerve center of whatever operation they had been observing throughout the day. After disappearing inside the building for nearly 30 minutes, the woman returned carrying not just a replacement backpack for the German Shepherd, but also what appeared to be communication equipment. Marcus watched as she extended a compact antenna and began operating what looked like a satellite communication device. The woman spent several minutes using the communication equipment, speaking in what sounded like multiple languages. Marcus could identify English among the languages being used, though he couldn't make out specific words from their distant observation position. The multilingual communication suggested connections that extended far beyond the local Afghan communities they had seen earlier. While the woman worked with her communication equipment, the German Shepherd rested in the shade of a rock overhang. The animal remained alert but relaxed, clearly familiar with this location and routine. Someone had invested considerable time in developing the relationship between this specific dog and this particular handler, creating a partnership that operated with military-level efficiency. The communication session concluded. The woman turned her attention to preparing the dog for its next journey. This preparation was more extensive than anything they had observed at previous stops. She checked the animal's physical condition thoroughly, examined its paws for cuts or soreness, and provided both food and water along with what appeared to be nutritional supplements. The new backpack being fitted to the German Shepherd was noticeably different from the previous loads. Instead of medical supplies or collected materials, this pack appeared to contain carefully organized packages of different sizes and shapes. The woman's handling of these items suggested they were both valuable and sensitive, requiring special care in transport. As the dog was being prepared for departure, Marcus noticed movement at several points around the hidden facility. Additional people emerged from concealed positions, revealing that the installation was more heavily staffed than had been initially apparent. These individuals maintained careful watch over the surrounding terrain, while the woman completed her work with the German Shepherd. The security measures and personnel deployment suggested this location was the hub of a sophisticated operation with significant resources and careful planning behind it. Whatever network they had stumbled upon was far more extensive and organized than a simple humanitarian aid distribution system. The German Shepherd's departure from the mountain facility was notably different from its previous departures. Instead of immediately setting off along a predetermined route, the dog waited while the woman gave what appeared to be detailed verbal instructions. The animal listened intently, its head tilted and ears focused, as if receiving a complex briefing for its next mission. The instructions complete, the woman pointed toward a path that led not down the mountain as Marcus had expected, but further up toward the highest peaks visible in the area. The dog's next destination was apparently at an even higher elevation, in terrain that would challenge even the most experienced mountaineers. As the German Shepherd began its ascent toward the higher peaks, Marcus faced a crucial decision. Following the animal further would require his patrol to venture into extremely exposed terrain, where they would be visible to anyone with optical equipment for miles around. The risk of detection was becoming prohibitively high, especially given their growing suspicion that they were observing a sophisticated intelligence operation. Marcus decided to maintain observation of the mountain facility rather than continue following the dog. The hidden installation was clearly a key component of whatever network they had discovered, and understanding its operations might provide more valuable intelligence than tracking one courier to another destination. The decision to remain in position proved immediately valuable. Within minutes of the German Shepherd's departure, The facility began displaying activity that confirmed Marcus's suspicions about its importance. Additional personnel emerged from concealed positions, communication equipment was deployed at multiple points around the installation, and what appeared to be a planning session began among the senior personnel. Marcus realized they had discovered something significant, possibly a coordination center for a network that used trained animals to maintain communication and supply lines across some of the most challenging terrain in Afghanistan. The implications of such a system were staggering, representing a level of innovation and adaptation that deserved both professional respect and careful analysis. The activity at the mountain facility increased dramatically as the afternoon wore on. Marcus and his remaining Marines maintained their concealed observation post, documenting what appeared to be a coordinated operation involving multiple teams and extensive communication networks. The woman who had handled the German Shepherd was clearly in a leadership role, directing activities and making decisions that affected the entire network. Through careful observation, Marcus began to piece together the scope of what they were witnessing. The hidden facility wasn't just a single installation, but rather a command center coordinating activities across a wide geographic area. Multiple communication channels were active simultaneously, with different operators handling what appeared to be contacts with various remote locations throughout the region. The multilingual nature of the communications became more apparent as the Marines listened. From their concealed position, besides the local Pashto and Dari languages they expected to hear in Afghanistan, there were clearly conversations taking place in English, German, and what sounded like other European languages. This suggested international involvement in whatever operation was being coordinated from the mountain hideout. Corporal Johnson, who had studied communications technology before joining the Marines, was particularly intrigued by the equipment being used. "Sergeant, they're using military-grade satellite communication gear," he reported quietly. "That equipment isn't available on the civilian market. Someone with serious resources and connections is backing this operation." The implications of Johnson's observation were significant. Military-grade communication equipment suggested either official government backing or access to resources through channels that circumvented normal procurement processes. Either possibility indicated they had discovered something far more important than a simple humanitarian aid network. As the communications activity continued, Marcus noticed a pattern in the timing and frequency of contacts. The facility appeared to be receiving regular status reports from multiple locations, coordinating schedules and providing instructions for future activities. This was clearly an operational command center, managing a network that extended across significant distances and involved numerous participants. The woman in charge of the facility called a meeting of the senior personnel present at the installation. Marcus watched as maps were spread on portable tables and detailed discussions began about routes, timing, and resource allocation. The level of planning and coordination visible in these discussions reinforced his growing conviction that they were observing a sophisticated intelligence operation. During the planning session, Marcus observed something that provided crucial insight into the nature of the network they had discovered. One of the maps being used showed marked locations throughout the region, connected by lines that clearly represented communication and transport routes. Many of these routes followed paths that would be impossible for conventional vehicles or even human travelers, but would be ideal for highly trained animals. The realization struck Marcus with stunning clarity. This wasn't just an operation that happened to use trained dogs for some deliveries. This was a comprehensive network designed around the unique capabilities of animal couriers, taking advantage of their ability to travel through terrain and conditions that would defeat human operatives or mechanical transport systems. The German Shepherd they had been following was just one element of what appeared to be a much larger system. Other animals were probably operating on different routes, carrying different types of cargo, connecting remote locations that couldn't be reached through conventional means. The scope and sophistication of such a network would represent a significant intelligence and logistical achievement. As the planning session continued, Marcus began to understand the strategic value of what he was observing. In a region where conventional communication and transport networks were constantly disrupted by conflict, weather, and geographical challenges, an animal-based courier system would provide reliable connectivity that could operate independently of infrastructure that might be targeted or compromised. The meeting at the mountain facility concluded with what appeared to be final instructions being given to various team members. Marcus watched as several individuals prepared to depart the installation, taking different routes that would distribute them across the surrounding terrain. The coordination and timing of these departures suggested they were part of a carefully orchestrated plan to maintain the network's operations. One departure was particularly significant. A man carrying sophisticated communication equipment left the facility using a route that led toward the valley where Marcus had left 2 of his Marines to observe the medical settlement. This suggested direct coordination between the command center and the humanitarian activities they had witnessed earlier, confirming that both were parts of the same overall operation. As evening approached, Marcus faced another critical decision. The intelligence value of what they had discovered was enormous, but continuing to observe the facility increased the risk of detection with each passing hour. The professional competence displayed by the network's operators suggested they would eventually implement security measures that could compromise his patrol's position. The decision was made for him when his radio crackled with an urgent transmission from the 2 Marines he had left at the medical settlement. "Bravo, leader, this is Bravo 3. We have multiple individuals approaching our previous observation target from different directions. It appears they're conducting a coordinated security sweep of the area." Marcus realized that the network's security procedures had been activated, probably in response to their prolonged presence in the area. The operators had detected signs of surveillance and were implementing countermeasures to protect their operations. The level of professional response confirmed that this was indeed a sophisticated intelligence operation with experienced personnel. "Bravo 3. Withdraw immediately using Route Charlie," Marcus radioed back. "Proceed to Rally Point Alpha and wait for further instructions. We're initiating our own withdrawal now." The withdrawal from the mountain observation post required all of Marcus's training and experience in tactical movement. The terrain that had provided excellent concealment for observation offered limited options for rapid departure, especially while avoiding detection by security teams that were now actively searching for signs of outside surveillance. As his reduced patrol moved carefully away from the mountain facility, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary discovery they had made. In following a single German shepherd carrying a backpack, they had uncovered a network that demonstrated remarkable innovation, extensive resources, and sophisticated operational planning. The humanitarian activities they had witnessed were apparently just one component of a much larger system, designed to maintain communication and coordination across one of the world's most challenging operational environments. The retreat through the mountain terrain took several hours, with multiple pauses to avoid detection by the security teams now active in the area. Marcus could hear occasional radio chatter in various languages, indicating that the search for their presence was both thorough and well coordinated. The professional competence of the response impressed him even as it complicated their withdrawal. By midnight, Marcus and his team had successfully reached their rally point and reunited with the 2 Marines who had been observing the medical settlement. The debriefing that followed revealed that the security response had been implemented across the entire network simultaneously, with teams arriving at multiple locations to conduct sweeps and implement additional protective measures. The coordination and timing of the network's security response provided final confirmation of what Marcus had suspected throughout the day. They had discovered an intelligence operation of significant scope and sophistication, one that deserved serious analysis and careful consideration by military intelligence professionals who could properly evaluate its implications and potential significance. The debriefing session at Forward Operating Base Chapman began at dawn, with Marcus and his patrol providing detailed accounts of their extraordinary discovery to intelligence officers who had been hastily assembled from multiple commands. The significance of what they had witnessed was immediately apparent to the experienced analysts who listened to their reports with growing amazement and concern. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the senior intelligence officer at the base, had seen many unusual situations during her deployments in Afghanistan, but nothing quite like what Marcus was describing. The use of highly trained animals as couriers in a sophisticated intelligence network represented a level of innovation that challenged conventional assumptions about operational capabilities in the region. Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to understand the importance of what you've discovered, Colonel Mitchell said after listening to the complete briefing. If your observations are accurate, we're looking at an intelligence network that has been operating under our radar for an unknown period of time, using methods that our standard surveillance and interdiction techniques weren't designed to detect. The implications were staggering. Military planners had focused on electronic communications, vehicle movements, and human travel patterns when developing strategies to monitor and disrupt hostile networks in the region. The possibility that significant intelligence and coordination activities were being conducted through animal couriers had never been seriously considered in operational planning. Marcus provided additional details about the German shepherd's physical condition, training level, and operational behavior. The animal's exceptional conditioning, precise route knowledge, and professional relationship with multiple handlers suggested an investment in time and resources that indicated long-term strategic planning rather than improvised tactical adaptations. The medical supplies and humanitarian activities they had observed added another layer of complexity to the intelligence picture. The network wasn't just moving information and coordinating activities. It was also providing essential services to isolated communities that had been cut off from conventional support systems by the ongoing conflict. Dr. James Patterson, a civilian analyst attached to the intelligence unit, raised questions about the broader implications of the network's humanitarian activities. If this organization is providing medical care and supplies to remote communities, we need to understand whether that's a cover for intelligence activities or a genuine humanitarian mission that happens to use sophisticated coordination methods. The distinction was crucial for determining how to respond to the discovery. If the network was primarily humanitarian in nature, with intelligence activities as a secondary function, any military response would need to consider the potential impact on civilian populations who depended on the services being provided. Colonel Mitchell decided to authorize a more comprehensive investigation of the network, using resources that hadn't been available to Marcus's patrol. Satellite surveillance would be redirected to monitor the locations they had identified, while signals intelligence units would attempt to intercept and analyze the communications they had observed. The investigation that followed over the next several days revealed the true scope of what Marcus had discovered. The animal courier network extended across hundreds of miles of mountainous terrain, connecting dozens of remote communities with coordination centers that maintained contact with the outside world through sophisticated communication systems. The network had been operating for at least 3 years, according to intelligence analysis of communication intercepts and satellite imagery. During that time, it had evolved from a simple supply delivery system into a comprehensive support network that provided medical care, communication services, and coordination capabilities to populations that had been effectively isolated by geography and conflict. The international connections that Marcus had observed were traced to humanitarian organizations based in several European countries, along with medical research institutions that were studying the unique health challenges faced by populations in remote mountain regions. The military-grade communication equipment was legally procured through contracts with organizations that had legitimate research and humanitarian missions in the area. Most significantly, the intelligence analysis revealed that the network was not affiliated with any hostile organizations or activities directed against coalition forces. Instead, it represented a remarkable example of innovation and adaptation in response to humanitarian needs that weren't being met through conventional channels. The German shepherd that had started the entire discovery was identified through careful analysis of satellite imagery and communication intercepts. The animal, whose handlers called him Max, was actually one of 12 dogs trained for courier duties within the network. Each animal had specific routes and responsibilities, creating a communication and supply system that could maintain operations even if individual couriers were lost or compromised. The training program for the courier dogs was traced to a former military dog handler who had remained in Afghanistan after completing his service with coalition forces. Working with local veterinarians and animal trainers, he had developed a program that produced animals capable of operating independently across terrain that would challenge human travelers. The revelation that sparked the most discussion among intelligence analysts was the network's potential value as a template for future operations. The principles demonstrated by the animal courier system could be adapted for military use, providing communication and coordination capabilities in environments where conventional systems might be vulnerable to interdiction or disruption. Colonel Mitchell arranged for Marcus to participate in a video conference with senior officers at Regional Command Headquarters, where his first-hand observations contributed to strategic discussions about the implications of the discovery. The possibility of developing similar capabilities for military use was being seriously considered. At the highest levels of command, the outcome of the extensive investigation was a decision to establish contact with the network's leadership through official diplomatic channels. Rather than treating the discovery as a security threat, Command decided to explore opportunities for cooperation and mutual support in humanitarian activities throughout the region. 6 months later, Marcus received notification that his discovery had contributed to the establishment of a formal partnership between coalition forces and the Animal Courier Network. The partnership included provisions for medical support, communication coordination, and intelligence sharing that benefited both military operations and civilian populations in remote areas. The German shepherd named Max became something of a celebrity within intelligence circles, representing the kind of innovation and adaptation that could emerge from desperate circumstances and dedicated individuals working to solve seemingly impossible problems. His story was included in training materials used to teach intelligence analysts about the importance of remaining alert to unconventional operational methods. Marcus often reflected on the chance encounter that had led to such significant discoveries. A routine patrol that began with curiosity about an unusual sight had ultimately revealed a network that challenged assumptions, demonstrated remarkable human ingenuity, and created new possibilities for cooperation in one of the world's most challenging operational environments. The final chapter of the story came a year later, when Marcus had the opportunity to meet Max and his handlers during a formal ceremony, establishing a permanent cooperation agreement between the network and coalition forces. The German shepherd, still in excellent condition and continuing his courier duties, seemed unaware of the international attention his work had generated. Standing in the Afghan mountains where his extraordinary journey of discovery had begun, Marcus watched Max prepare for another mission, carrying supplies to communities that depended on his reliable service. The sight reminded him that sometimes the most significant discoveries come not from sophisticated intelligence operations or advanced technology, but from the simple act of paying attention to something unusual and following it to see where it leads.